You know the Persians as the villains, the faceless hordes, the cruel god-king lashing the sea in a rage. That is the picture almost everyone has, and every piece of it was painted by the Greeks, who were fighting them and losing and terrified. Here is what they leave out. Persia was the largest empire the world had ever seen, ruling maybe 40% of all humans alive. It was richer than anywhere on Earth. And in an age of casual cruelty, it was strangely, deliberately tolerant. The villain of the story was the most advanced civilization of its age. So how did the most powerful empire of the ancient world end up remembered as the bad guy? Because history is not written by the winners, it is written by the ones who write. And the Persians left us palaces and receipts. The Greeks left us the story. Guess which one survived? This is the real story of Persia, the empire that invented the highway and the postal service. That wrote down human rights 1,000 years before anyone else. That freed the Jews from captivity and was called anointed by God in the Bible. And the strange truth of who really destroyed it. Start at the beginning, with a boy nobody expected. Around 559 BC, a man named Cyrus became king of Persia, a minor people paying tribute to a bigger neighbor. He should be a footnote. Instead, in about 20 years, he built the largest empire the world had yet known, and he did it in a way no conqueror had done before. He overthrew his overlords, then swallowed the fabulously rich kingdom of Lydia and its king Croesus, a name that still means wealth. Then he took Babylon, the greatest city on earth, reportedly without a battle. But it is what he did after conquering that made him legendary. Instead of massacring the conquered and burning their temples, which is what everyone did, Cyrus let them keep their gods, their customs, and their laws. He wrote it down on a clay cylinder that still exists. Many call it the first charter of human rights. 2,500 years ago, a conqueror announced that people could keep their own religion. When Cyrus took Babylon, he found the people of Judah held there in captivity. He freed them. He sent them home to Jerusalem and paid to rebuild their temple. This is in the Bible. It is why the Hebrew scriptures call Cyrus, a Persian, a foreigner, God's anointed, the only non-Jew ever given that title. Cyrus died in battle on the frontier and was buried in a plain stone tomb that still stands. His empire, though, was just getting started, because the next kings took his conquests and did the harder thing. They turned a pile of conquered kingdoms into a machine that could run for 200 years. The great organizer was Darius. He cut the empire into provinces called satrapies, each run by a governor, and then planted royal spies in each one, literally called the eyes and ears of the king, to watch the governors. He standardized the coins, the weights, the taxes. He turned conquest into administration, and he built the royal road. Over 1,600 miles of maintained highway with stations and fresh horses spaced a day apart. A message could cross the whole empire in about a week, a journey that would take a walker 3 months. Nothing moved information that fast again until the telegraph. The couriers who rode that road were so reliable that a Greek, describing them with grudging awe, wrote a line you have heard without knowing it was about Persia. Neither snow nor rain, nor heat, nor gloom of night stays these couriers. It is carved on a post office in New York. It was written about the enemy. To show the world what they were, they built Persepolis, a ceremonial capital of vast columned halls and staircases, carved with a parade of every nation in the empire. And here is the detail that matters. The carvings show those peoples not in chains, but standing, bringing gifts, in their own clothes, treated as members of something. Their religion was Zoroastrianism, one of the oldest still practiced. It taught a single wise creator God, a cosmic struggle between truth and the lie, free will, a final judgment, heaven and hell, ideas that flowed into Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. When you picture the afterlife, some of that picture started here. They loved gardens so much, they engineered them in the desert. Walled green paradises fed by hidden channels. Their word for such an enclosed garden was paradisa. The Greeks borrowed it, and it passed down through the centuries into English as a single word. Paradise. When you imagine heaven as a garden, you are borrowing from Persia. They made deserts bloom with the qanat, a network of underground tunnels that carried mountain water for tens of miles without losing it to the sun. Some are still in use today, 2,500 years later. This was not a horde. This was one of the most sophisticated engineering cultures on Earth. And we know how they ran things because they kept receipts, thousands of clay tablets found at Persepolis. They show something startling. Women in the Persian workforce were paid. Skilled female workers earned rations equal to men. New mothers received extra pay and time off, documented in the accounts 25 centuries ago. They did have a fearsome side. The king's guard was an elite corps kept at exactly 10,000 men. The instant one died or fell sick, another replaced him, so the number never changed. To their enemies, it looked like an army that could not be killed. The Greeks called them the Immortals, and the name stuck. Darius carved his story into a cliff face at Behistun in 3 languages, 100 meters up. Like the Rosetta Stone, it later became the key that let scholars read the lost cuneiform of the entire ancient Middle East. The Persians did not just make history, they left the instructions for reading it. Even their customs were shrewd. A Greek reported, half amazed, that when Persians made an important decision drunk, they reviewed it again sober the next day, and only acted if it survived both, and if they decided it sober first, they reviewed it drunk. A people caricatured as reckless had a rule specifically against acting on a single mood, which brings us at last to the Greeks. And you need to understand how small this was for Persia. The Greek cities were a fringe of quarreling towns on the far western edge of an empire that stretched to India. To the King of Kings, the war with Greece was a border problem in a distant province. To the Greeks, it was the end of the world. It started when Greek cities inside the empire rebelled, and Athens sent ships to help them burn a Persian city. Darius put the revolt down, but he did not forget who had interfered. He sent a force to punish Athens, and on a plane called Marathon, the thing no one expected happened. The Athenians won. Darius died before he could answer. His son Xerxes did it for him, and he did not send a punishment force. He raised the largest army the ancient world had ever assembled, drawn from dozens of nations, to end the Greek problem permanently. This is the invasion the Greeks would never stop talking about. You know what happened at Thermopylae? A Spartan king and his men held a narrow pass to the death. It is one of history's great last stands. But flip the camera around. From the Persian side, it was a 3-day delay at a mountain choke point, after which they walked through, took central Greece, and burned Athens to the ground exactly as planned. Then it went wrong. The Greeks lured the huge Persian fleet into the narrow straits of Salamis, where its size became a trap, and destroyed it. Xerxes, watching from a throne on the shore, went home. The invasion failed. But notice the scale. Persia lost a border war and remained the superpower of the world for another 150 years. And here is the part the movies never show. After losing on the battlefield, Persia beat the Greeks anyway, with money. It funded whichever Greek city was weaker, keeping Athens and Sparta at each other's throats for generations. Persian gold, not Greek swords, decided who ruled Greece. The empire simply bought the outcome. 2 centuries in, the empire was still enormous and wealthy. But the court had grown poisonous. Kings were murdered by their own families. Brothers killed brothers for the throne. The body of the empire was healthy. The head was sick. And far to the west, in a kingdom the Persians barely noticed, a young man was studying their empire like a map of a house he intended to rob. Alexander of Macedon. He idolized the Persian kings, even as he set out to destroy them. With a small army, he crossed into the empire, and in 3 enormous battles, defeated a Persian force many times his size each time. In under a decade, the largest empire on earth was his. He chased the last Persian king across the empire, only to find him murdered by his own men. Alexander gave him a royal funeral and executed the killer. And then, drunk at a feast, he let his men burn Persepolis to the ground. The empire of Cyrus and Darius was over. But watch what the conqueror did next. He started dressing like a Persian king. He kept the Persian system of government because it was better than anything Greece had. He married a Persian noblewoman and had thousands of his soldiers do the same. He so admired the empire he had destroyed that he tried to become it, and his own Macedonians nearly mutinied over it. And Persia refused to stay conquered. Within a couple of centuries, a new Persian empire rose. The Parthians, who fought Rome to a standstill for 300 years, and once wiped out an entire Roman army. Then another, the Sasanians, who rebuilt Persian glory so completely that they nearly destroyed the Eastern Roman Empire. Persia and Rome, the two superpowers of the ancient world, fought each other for 7 centuries. Their final war was so long and so total that it left both of them exhausted and broke. And that exhaustion, right at the end, opened a door that neither of them saw coming. In the 7th century, a new power exploded out of Arabia, unified by a new religion, Islam. It struck both worn-out empires at once. Rome's eastern half survived, barely, shrunken. But the Persian Empire, the 1,000-year civilization of Cyrus, fell completely, and its people slowly took on the new faith. And here the pattern repeats one last time. The Persians were conquered, and again they conquered back through culture. Persian administrators ran the new empire. Persian poets, scientists, and thinkers drove the Islamic Golden Age. The conquerors ended up speaking Persian at court and building in the Persian style. Persia lost the war and shaped the peace. Again, so why is Persia the villain? Because the people it fought at the edge of its empire, the Greeks, happened to become the foundation of Western education. For 2,500 years, Western children learned the story from the Greek side, where Persia is the faceless horde. The most tolerant empire of its age was written down as the monster by the one enemy the West chose to remember. But the stone survived too. The cylinder of Cyrus sits in a museum, still readable, declaring tolerance 25 centuries before it was fashionable. The Bible still calls a Persian God's anointed. The road, the post, the idea that a conqueror might let you keep your gods. The villain of the story turns out to have written some of its best chapters. And every empire in this story, Persia, Greece, Egypt, Rome, was built on top of an older one that invented almost everything first. Writing, the city, the wheel, law, the weak. Between two rivers, in a land whose name means the land between the rivers, stood the first civilization on Earth. Mesopotamia, Sumer, Babylon, Assyria. The people who wrote the first story, did the first maths, brewed the first beer, and drew the first map. Everyone in this series stood on their shoulders. That is where this all began, and that is the next story.